A man will be commended according to his wisdom, but he who is of a perverse heart will be despised. My name's Arthur. Thank you for joining me as we meditate in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 8. A man will be commended according to his wisdom, but he who is of a perverse heart will be despised. First of all, let's look at a man who is commended. And we have the story in Luke chapter 7, where Jesus came to Capernaum, and a certain centurion's servant, who was dear to him, was sick and ready to die. So, when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that the one for whom he should do this was deserving, for he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. The sequel of the story was that Jesus came and healed the centurion's servant. But let's put this in context. Capernaum was the base where Jesus was operating. The Romans were an occupying power, and generally the Romans were despised. This centurion, the head of the Roman garrison in Capernaum, obviously had to deal with the elders of the city, and he dealt with them obviously with great wisdom, so that when he had a need and he heard that Jesus could heal the need, his approach was not to come to Jesus directly, but to call the elders of the city, to come through the elders of the city to Jesus. And they had great respect for him, and so they testify of him to Jesus, saying, "This one is worthy, this one is deserving that you should help him, for he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue." The proverb we're thinking about says, "A man will be commended according to his wisdom." Although this man was an occupying power, he didn't rule there as a tyrant. He saw his role there as coming to bless. He was a righteous man who was there to help the people of the city, to care for them, even building a synagogue for them. So some civic leaders have specifically that role in mind. They're not worried about their own position and glorifying themselves. They are seeking to serve the people that they administer. And this centurion, although he was a Roman, occupying a major Jewish centre, he was commended according to his wisdom. The second part of the proverb is, "But he who is of a perverse heart will be despised." The perverse heart is the one that is focused on itself. And we have the story of Nabal in 1 Samuel chapter 25. This was a period of time when David was outlawed by the king. King Saul was out to get him, and so he had spent time living out in the wilderness. And a band of people came to him, and so he was responsible for some 600 men. Nabal was a great landholder with many sheep, and his shepherds were grazing out in the fields. David and his men didn't take advantage and steal the sheep. Rather, they protected Nabal's shepherds from other wild bands of people. Other wicked people stayed clear of the territory where David was, because they knew David was righteous, whereas these other bands were concerned with just stealing and taking advantage. But David, no, he was righteous. There was a shortage of food, and so David sent a message to Nabal saying, "Please, we guarded your shepherds. Now please give us some food, for it's a feast day. Ask your young men whether we were generous to them or not. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servant and to your son David." And so David's representatives came to Nabal with David's request. But he said, "Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away each one from his master." In other words, David is in rebellion against Saul, which was not the truth. Saul was attacking David, but David was not in rebellion against Saul. Nabal chooses to follow the way of Saul. "Shall I then take my bread and my water and my meat that I have killed for my shearers, and give it to men whom I do not know where they are from?" Now, of course, these very men that he was referring to would testify of who David was and of his character. They would be happy to share their food with David, since David had blessed them. But Nabal did not consult them. David's men returned, and David said, "Put on your sword, every one of you." And so 400 men geared up and set off with David. But one of the young men in Nabal's household, hearing what Nabal had said, went to Abigail, Nabal's wife. "Look, David sent servants from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled him. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything, as long as we accompanied them when we were in the fields. They were a wall to us, both by day and night, all the time we were with them keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what you will do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him." Then Abigail made haste, and took 200 loaves of bread, a skin of wine, 5 sheep ready dressed, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys, and said to the servants, "Go on before me, see, I am coming after you." But she didn't tell Nabal. So she went below the brow of the hill, so Nabal didn't see her, and came to David. Now David said, "Surely in vain I have protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that belongs to him, and he has repaid me evil for good." But Abigail got off her donkey, and fell on her face before David. "On me, O Lord, on me let this iniquity be. Please let your maidservant speak in your ear, and hear the words of your maidservant. Please let not my lord regard this scoundrel Nabal, for as his name is, so is he." Nabal means fool, and folly is with him. "But I your maidservant did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent. Now therefore, my lord, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, since the Lord has held you back from coming to bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now then, let your enemies and those who seek harm from my lord be as Nabal. And now this present which your maidservant has brought to my lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my lord. And please forgive the trespass of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make for my lord an enduring house, because my lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil is not found in you throughout your days. Yet a man has risen to pursue you and seek your life, but the life of my lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God, and the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the pocket of a sling." David responds, "Blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me." David accepted Abigail's plea. Abigail went home and told Nabal what had happened. The next day the Lord struck him with a heart attack, and he died. And afterward Abigail became one of David's wives. Our proverb was, "He who is of a perverse heart will be despised." The servants of Nabal despised their master, because his heart was perverse. We must make choices in life, and the way that we think about things affects the choices that we make. If we have a righteous heart, seeking truth and goodness, then we will make certain choices. If we are seeking our own advantage, then we will make other choices. Nabal was thinking for his own advantage. Saul is the king, David is an outlaw. I'm going to stick with Saul, who is king. Doesn't matter whether the king is justified in his attack on David or not. Saul is the king. I will follow him, and so I will not support David against the king. But Abigail recognized that although Saul was oppressing David, David in the end would be victorious. This reflects the previous proverb, "The wicked are overthrown and are no more, but the house of the righteous will stand." Abigail saw that David was righteous and Saul was unrighteous, and so although Saul had the power at the moment, his power would be taken from him, and would be given to David. This is what she believed, and she acted accordingly. A man will be commended according to his wisdom, but he who is of a perverse heart will be despised.